Hello and welcome to Boomer Bust, the NFL Fantasy Football Podcast. It's episode 42, and as ever, I'm joined with my co-host Shug. How's it going, Shug?
Yeah, not bad, mate. Glad to be back. How are you?
I'm good. And for our regular listeners or our regular viewers, we felt it wouldn't have been right to roll with a podcast on Tuesday night, so we postponed it to this week, and we'll try and cram everything in tonight. But I think it goes without saying, Shug, there's no other place to start than the tragic events we've seen between the Bills and the Bengals on Monday night's late game, and the collapse of Damar Hamlin, who we've received some positive news on.
Yeah, it was absolutely horrible. Not going to lie, I didn't watch the game live. I got up the next morning and seen that it had been postponed. My ultimate thought was, oh, it must have been weather or something. But then obviously seeing what had happened, I've got to admit I stayed away from watching a lot of the footage. I know there wasn't too many. It was kept kind of private as usual, as these things are. It's quickly kind of covered up and everyone's done quite private. But I didn't really look at the footage, but obviously horrible. But positive kind of updates going, so fingers crossed that he's on the mend.
Yeah, 100%. And a tweet sent out earlier today read that per the physicians caring for Damar Hamlin at the University of Cincinnati Medical Center, Damar has shown remarkable improvement over the past 24 hours. While still critically ill, he has demonstrated that it appears to be neurologically intact. His lungs continue to heal and he is making steady progress. We are grateful for the love and support we have received. And that was put out by the Buffalo Bills. And it's good that there is positive news, and more stuff's starting to sort of filter out that he's now communicating by hand, and he actually wrote down, "Did we win?" To which the doctors replied, "You did. You won at life." So it is, but it's all the echoes of what we've seen with Christian Eriksen at the Euros. We're big soccer fans, obviously, and yeah, for me, it was very reminiscent of that.
Yeah, it's horrible to see. The one positive you can see is something like that happening. I mean, they've obviously got, without getting to talk about something I don't really know anything at all about, they've obviously had those issues, and it's lucky in some ways. It's horrible it's happened so publicly, but in a good way, when this happens, they've got that support right away. They've got medical staff rushing on. That happens that happens when you're doing something privately or you're in the house, then you're not as lucky, So it's hard to say lucky for these guys, but you know what I mean. It's happening in public. They at least get the care straight away, and it's great to hear that he's making a recovery just now. It's looking good.
Oh yeah, like when you say lucky, like, I know people might look at that a different way, but it's the right word. We're talking life or death here, and it looks like he's pulling through, which is good.
Yeah.
For me, watching it live, I know we're here to talk about a fantasy point of view, but tonight's a wee bit different. But we're obviously all tuning in terms of a huge game, and I think everyone with fantasy playoff implications and fantasy Super Bowl championship stuff would have had either Bills players or Bengals players playing. I know that we did. So I was tuned in, but it's when he went down, like, there was a different sort of urgency from the doctors and the referees in terms of, we know what it's like with concussions or neck injuries. They're very cautious, but it's now starting to come out that the Buffalo medical team have saved his life, which is unbelievable. You've got to take your hat off to these folk.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, I didn't see it live, but speaking comparisons to what happened with Ericsson, you get that way when, and I'd imagine it was the same, the crowd just goes eerily quiet. It's a regular injury, people are still talking amongst themselves, just taking that break to go to the toilet or whatever. It's literally silence from the crowd, and you know something's really, really bad. And just you see by the players' reaction, it's horrible moments, and it must have an impact on the players. It must be tough. I think the right thing was done, not playing on the game, obviously. I think you would have got not much of a game, to be honest with you. I think how could your mind be on playing, to be honest, after that. But just happy. I think it just shows the developments as well. Again, without going into stuff that we don't really know a lot about. A few years ago, that he maybe wasn't as lucky to have that sort of care and that sort of, the sort of medical advances there. So, as I said, hopefully come out the other side.
Yeah, 100%. And we touched on the Christian Eriksen stuff there. I actually stumbled across a really good tweet earlier, which does have It's no coincidence that the Christian Eriksen stuff is linked to it with it being a cardiac arrest in the field. But Dr. Jim Ellis, who's actually the NFL Director of Emergency Preparedness, he actually shared a tweak that he made to the NFL's preparation in the case of an emergency coming into this season. Now, before each game, like the medical personnel, the emergency personnel before every single game now have a 60-minute meeting so that there's a code of conduct and everybody knows what they'll be doing in terms of who'll be carrying the defibrillator, who'll be actioning it, who'll be sort of looking after the player in that way. And this all came as a result of the Christian Eriksen stuff. Dr. Jim Ellis was part of a team who was attending the Euros at Wembley. And this was, like we say, the same tournament where Christian Eriksen fell out. So it shows that what can be learned from this has now saved another life, and touch wood, it gets back to a full and healthy living.
Yeah, and some of the knock-on effect, I won't call them positives because obviously it's a bit insensitive saying it that way. But the things that come of that, things like this, is that people do, not just in the face, not just at the top level at NFL. They probably do more checks, they do more sort of health scans of players, different advances there, different procedures. But also, like throughout the country, you'll see more people getting checked, more athletes at all sorts of levels getting sort of regular heart checks and regular health checks. So I think the things you don't see, the knock-on effect that has, it probably does help a lot of people, and does make everyone a lot more vigilant and stuff like that. So, as I said, I don't want to use the word positives, but that's sort of knock-on effects you can have from this, that everybody tightens up procedures and things could be a bit more there's always improvements that can be made.
Yeah, and in terms of Christian Eriksen, I know I keep coming back to that. Look at where he is now. I know it's a far cry from where Damar is at the moment, but look at where he is now. He's made a full recovery. I think he's on a pacemaker, am I right in saying that? But he's back. He's playing for one of the top clubs in England, in Man United. He came back probably better than ever. The form he was on at Brentford before he moved there. And if there's any sort of motivation that to push someone on that's had this sort of thing, then he's your best example.
Yeah, I think, as I said, you don't want to go too far into it, but I mean, you look back the years, I mean, there's been some really, really tragic things happen, like Mark Vivian Foy in this country, Phil O'Donnell, horrible situations where they passed away tragically. So it is so nice to see somebody like Eriksen coming back from that and playing again. It does give you hope that there is now advances where, because you've got a heart problem, doesn't mean you can never come back and you can never play again. Obviously, being fit and healthy and alive is the main thing, but it just shows you that now athletes can come back. There's so many advances that they can make a full recovery from this, and hopefully he's the same.
Yeah, 100%. And it's good to see the generosity that sort of swarms around it. He had his own charity, which was a toy drive, and it was registered to, I think it was his grandmother's care home. His target was $3,500 to be raised to be sent toys to underprivileged kids, and folk just swooped on it, and all of a sudden we're up to $7 million, which is just unbelievable, isn't it?
Brilliant. As I said, there's good comes every bad situation everywhere, so that's brilliant to hear. Stuff like that. As I said, the good things that come out is people just being generous, people supporting, and then people, again, in any sport, when stuff like that happens, you totally forget about who's playing in what team or whatever. You just want somebody to be all right, don't you?
Yeah, 100%. And I think it's good that we've left the podcast this late in the week, because I just didn't feel comfortable talking about it, not knowing his status. And now that we're getting the positive news, it's a bit better. And the downside of it was we didn't want to talk about fantasy football. We didn't want to talk about American football at that time. But I think we're now at a stage where we can sort of cover it. And I've been bombarded with questions all week, Shug, and I've had to kind of rein it in with guys a wee bit and said, look, when the time's right, we'll talk about what happens in fantasy football. And I think we'll move on to sort of talking about that now, because there's been all sorts of ways flying about the internet, because most leagues would have had their championship game week 17, unlike one of our leagues where we actually play a playoff to play the championship in week 18 to try and keep it as competitive as we can. And just looking around what other leagues are doing, is there any that stood out to you? Because there's going to be folk listening still under the pretense of, right, okay, the game's been postponed, we don't know when it's going to be played. And if I'm right in saying the Bengals or the Bills can still achieve the 1 seed this weekend, so if either one of them get the 1 seed, you'll probably find that if the game is replayed, then the rest players, which has fantasy implications. So,
Yeah.
in your mind, what is the most straightforward way to do this, or the fairest way, should I say?
And in my mind, I don't think you can wait any longer for this game getting replayed. You've got to obviously get this tied up and know this weekend what the games are going to be. So you have to come up with something straight away. Now, there's been all sorts kind of flying about. For me, I think, although there can be sometimes harsh things that happen and different things that you can't really control, injuries and whatnot, I think this is a kind of out of the ordinary example. So I don't think anybody, in my opinion anyway, should be eliminated, relegated, or lose a league, lose a championship based on this game being postponed. The idea we've come up with, I don't know if it's been circulated in other ways, I don't know if it was just us that was talking about it, but as a 4-way, if you're in a semi-final, just the final week, the one who has the best points out of that wins the championship. In my mind, maybe because it keeps me in it, but in my mind, that's probably the fairest way of doing it.
Yeah. As for me, it's one of two ways. I've seen folks saying that go with the player's average points for the season. Now, that would have meant that I win. I was 15 points behind Joe Mixon to play, whose average is 15.7 points, which would have meant that I went on to win, which isn't really that fair, is it? For me, I like the idea of using the likes of everybody will have Diggs, Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, Joe Mixon, like that, Chase. Use these guys' points from week 18 and add them to your week 17 total. Now, I think that is a good way to go about it in terms of the guys who played the championship this weekend, so they're not so much in like a semi-final like us guys.
Yeah.
I think that would be a good way of doing it.
Yeah.
You hear of a lot of guys splitting the pot and then deciding who's the champion from there, but our league isn't really about the money, is it? I say that because I'm facing relegation.
Right. Nah, there's no ideal way, is there? Because you can always argue taking their average points. Somebody could have an outstanding week, somebody could have a terrible week. For me personally, I'm sitting 35, maybe 36 points behind, something like that.
Yeah.
And I've got
Devin
not
Singletary.
Singletary and the Bills defence still to go. So I didn't think they would make up those points, but it's not out with the realms of possibility of them making up. It's definitely not.
Well, you look at my game, I was up against Mike Evans, and he's not kicked his arse all season, and all of a sudden, 3 touchdowns later, and I think he hit something
Yeah.
like 40 odd points, and I'm back in the rough it again. So,
As I said, if you're doing your championship this weekend, I think it makes sense to just roll it over to next weekend, take the points for next weekend. I think that's a fairly simple way of doing it. I don't think it's fair to just say they didn't have, that game wasn't played the rest of it, so you just whatever points they had from the start of that game. I don't think that's a fair way of doing it. I don't think it's a fair way of doing it projected points, because how often are they accurate?
yeah.
No, it's a guess. So, and again, the one we talked about is taking players from your bench. Again, I don't really think that's an ideal way of doing it, because, as I said, positions you might not have backup certain positions. It just doesn't seem really fair just picking from your bench who had the top scores.
Nah, not at all. And
It's not a fair way of doing it. It's for me, as I said, it's not. I mean, we have a laugh about it. It's not the be all and end all at a league, but it's just frustrating it's happened this late in the league where it's all right when it came down to it.
I know, but it is what it is, and the whole situation is just a reminder that we're just a group of mates that enjoy playing fantasy football. We enjoy coming on here and talking about it, and whoever wins, wins. And if we can get another week out it and have a bit more fun out it, then that's the main thing for me. Like, we're going to enjoy it, aren't we?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, as I said, I'll be giving you a bit, certainly, if I feel I'm cheated out of it.
Of course you will.
But as I said, it's just a wee game at the end of the day. So regardless of, obviously it's good that things have turned around and been positive. But I mean, it's a guy's life you were talking about a couple of days ago. You know what I mean? We spoke about last week about the tour, about the concussion thing, how his long term health is more important than anything there. For me, when that happened the other night, everybody, you don't even care who wins a Super Bowl, who wins anything. It's a guy's life. Do you know what I mean? At the end of the day, so I'm sure there will be across, especially over America, there'll be people getting particularly angry and annoyed about fantasy football, but there's definitely more to life in that.
Yeah, 100%. And even for me, my heart goes out to T. Higgins. See the pictures of him, seeing him with his arm round his mum walking out and stuff like that. Like, that really hit me hard. And
Right.
it is like he's taking it bad, and you hear the news that I don't think he's left the hospital, the surrounding areas that Hamlin's in and stuff, because he really cares about what happened. And
Right.
in his case, in our case, it's a freak accident. He's done nothing to hurt the guys. It's not. It's not intentional,
Yeah,
but he just seems that good a guy that he's took it badly, and he's human, and when you've got that about you, you would. But yeah, that in terms of that, listen, we're all happy just to be involved with a group of mates and playing fantasy football, as I say. So
exactly.
we'll put it to a vote, won't we? I did say, right, one of my ways was coming up was whoever gave the commissioner the most cheek throughout the season was out, and your name was first out the hat. So
100%.
so
Nah,
I've put you into the relegation dogfight, and I'm now moving into the championship dogfight. So
for me, I think the 4-way. I'll make a last case for that. I think that's the most exciting way of doing it. 4-way. And by the way, I 100% don't think I'll win it if it comes down to that, because I very rarely get the most. I don't think I've ever this season had the most points in 1 week.
but
I
did I
always
not tell
do
you, right?
that.
So I've got Drew in my bracket, who is in the relegation dogfight.
Mhm.
He finished eighth. He finished eighth, and you finished second. And because we go by head to head, you actually only scored 2 more points total than Drew going into the playoffs.
Get it around them.
I think we'll put that in the wee question at the end of the season and see if folk want that change. But I like how it's competitive like that.
100%.
You win, you got like who said this old saying? If you want to be the best, you've got to beat the best.
Aye, exactly.
I
Exactly.
know. So yeah, we'll take a vote amongst the guys that are involved tonight and just see how it goes. But you'll be voting Fatal 4-way.
I'll be voting for it. And listen, see if the vote doesn't go my way, I can just say that it's a tainted title and it doesn't count for anything, and take a big fuss in that way. And if I do win, it'll be a great title. So either way, it's box office.
I know. Because ours is a semi-final, I don't want to dwell on this too long. I would want the week 18 points to replace the week 17 points, because I've scored so well. It's been a good game. We're both so close.
Mm-hmm.
And that would mean, say, for example, whoever lost. Yeah, so say Drew's ahead just now. So say, for example, Mixon scored more than 15. Drew ended up losing. On paper, it might not show Drew against whoever lost the other game, but we can make it their scores versus each other, if that makes sense.
I just think that's so complicated.
It's a fatal 4-way like WWE.
Yes, no,
Hell in
good
a
game.
hell in a cell.
Aye, that'd be good.
Oh, no, I tell you what we'll do. A ladder match. How good would that be?
Aye. See what you also suggest is putting Madden on.
Oh, aye, that was a good one.
No for me. No for me. I decided a computer game.
So, for anyone that's not picked up on that, I actually think Yahoo came out. Was it Yahoo? It was one of the fantasy apps came out and suggested that folks simulate the game on Madden. See, to be fair, Joe Mixon has totally underperformed this season, so there's a good chance he scores about 40 points in Madden. Anyway, moving on, Shug. We're moving into week 18, pretty much the end of the regular season. The fantasy season's all over for a lot of folk. Some folk maybe not, but instead of looking at our sort of start 'em, sit 'em, I'm going to look at something different. And it's picked up from a tweet from gent called Salvetri, who's quite famous on Instagram and YouTube, and his content's great. So I'll put a link to it in the description if anyone wants to come across it. And what he basically tweeted an alert about was coming into week 18, a lot of people might not know this, but there's a lot of NFL players fighting for key incentives this week, meaning that if they get X amount of yards, X amount of catches or touchdowns, then they're going to make a hell of a lot of money. I sent it across to you, Shug, and in fantasy terms, like obviously there's the usual one there. Patrick Mahomes needs 430 yards to set the record. He faces the Raiders, who are the number 32nd in the league. In order for him to win, not win, get the record. His isn't bonus based, but obviously you're starting Patrick Mahomes anyway. But there's other ones in there. Any of them stood out for you, Shug, in terms of who you would be dithering on starting, but this could sway you?
Yeah, I think. I mean, not really swirling on whether to start them, but like, so they're not in my team, but likes of Justin Fields has got one in there.
His is, but just a second, because I actually seen, I think it was on Pro Football Focus, they were saying they don't think Fields is going to start.
Right.
So they're saying he's injured, he's carrying a rib injury. What I would say about that is, and what they said on that, which was quite cool, they're not saying they're tanking, but they're going to play a weakened team. Fields isn't going to play. So that's probably one to keep an eye on in terms of fantasy terms. And players that you've got playing against the Bears have got to start. Who are they playing this week? Have you got it in front of you there?
The Bears are up against.
We'll get there.
Not actually sure. 2 seconds. I had it down. Surely you've got this.
Failure to prepare is preparing for failure.
The Bears are playing the Vikings.
The Vikings, right into your hands. You've got Kirk Cousins, man.
Exactly.
Yeah, so I'd be all over. I'd be all over any Vikings players for that one. Adam Thielen, even KJ Osborne.
And then you've got as well. Listen, you'd start him anyway, but Justin Jefferson needs 194 yards to set the record.
Oh, does he?
Yep. So he produced 154 yards versus Chicago earlier, so it's possible. So 194 yards he needs.
See,
so that is very good news for me in terms of my quarterback.
Yeah, but see what annoys me about this, right? And they talk about records. They expanded the league. They expanded the league to a 17-game season instead of 16. So all the previous records that were set as 16-team records, 16-game records, kind of out the window in a way.
Yeah.
Maybe I just sound old. They don't make them like they used to. Also, let's see. Christian Kirk stood out for me. I know most folk would start him anyway, but there's probably a lot of swithering. Christian Kirk needs 2 catches for a $500,000 bonus and 91 yards to trigger a $500,000 bonus. That is, he's getting that. You've got to think he's getting that. 2 catches and 91 yards.
Yeah.
The season Christian Kirk's been having, the way Trevor Lawrence is playing, you've got to think he'll get that. So for me, automatic starter because of that. It's the NFL. These guys put their body in the line. They're in it for the money, aren't they?
Yeah. I think as well, like, there was another one that said Carol Lawson on defence.
Yes.
So that on the other side, there's probably a few of those where you're going to see defences eager to get sacks and stuff like that to try and get bonuses as well. So interesting, isn't it? And he's up against the Dolphins.
Number 31 against defence in the league. Number 31 O-line, actually, sorry, should I say. One that stood out for me, for you, Zay Jones. Let's see, Zay Jones needs 2 catches, only 2 catches for $250,000 bonus, and he needs 98 yards for a $500,000 bonus.
Yeah.
That's decent enough. Let's see as well. DeAndre Carter, who might be available in a lot of leagues for the Chargers, he needs 2 catches for $250,000. Carter has run less than 10 routes in 4 straight games, but LA Chargers have stated they're aware of this incentive.
Yeah.
So Carter had 2 catches and 3 targets last week. So That's maybe one to watch out for. There was another one that jumped out for me. Let me find it. Sorry, there's loads in here. It's really good. There is Smith. Not that one. I'll find another good one. Jamal Williams needs 6 rushing yards to hit 1,000. He would cash in for a $250,000 bonus, and he faces the Packers on Sunday night. That's going to be a very, very good game. Detroit Lions versus the Packers. It's winning in.
It's unbelievable. See when you see on the face of things, you look at some games, you think that's a bit of a dead rubber, or this team won't be taking it that seriously, they'll be holding back. But you see how much money's on the line for a few players, and
Yeah.
it makes it massive. So it's a great insight as well. Have a look for things like this on social media, because it really helps ahead of these games when you're thinking, I'm not sure how they're going to go about their plans for this week. It really can, these wee extra tips can certainly help.
I know. Do you know, this is why I love the NFL, and like you say, the insight that you get, because you don't get this in soccer. That these incentive-based deals that are what's in their contract. Like,
it never usually gets in public domain, does it? If certain players have appearance money or whatever, goal bonuses, whatever, you never really hear anything about it. NFL's a lot more open in terms of what the contracts are, how much they're getting paid, and it's good for the fans. It's good for sort of fantasy stuff like that. Because in sort of British football, we'd be wondering, why is he playing, why is he not playing. Here you can kind of read between the lines and see exactly why they're doing a certain thing.
100%. Oh, and on that game, the Lions game, here's a guy that will probably be available in waivers, and this is one I was looking for. Khalif Raymond needs 7 catches to earn $125,000 and 50 yards to hit $125,000.
Yeah.
Oh, man, to be an NFL player, eh?
Oh, unreal, eh?
My life would be sorted with a few catches. Do you think there's you get to this point in the season and these players are obviously on heavily incentivized deals that they're like, right, okay, we're in the playoffs, we're going to rest you, and they're like, but I need X amount of catches or X amount of yards to earn this amount of money, and they cut them a deal?
I don't know. I don't know. It'd be interesting to find out, but maybe. But it always makes me think of how, if sort of we see it in British football, if a certain transfer fee is reported to be due after he makes X amount of appearances, you then see a player going on the bench for ages. Or sometimes the other way, a manager throws a player on in the last minute or so, and you think that must be embarrassing. Then you think he's probably on good appearance money.
Yeah.
So I always think it's interesting that what can a coach, like, if you're saying there, like a coach or a team might be like, let's sort you out, let's make sure you get that, get your bonus. Like, do you know what I mean? It's interesting how it all works out.
Yeah, I think there was one a couple of years ago, and Gronk needed so many catches for a huge bonus. I think it was like $1 million bonus. And obviously Brady at quarterback, the two of them are best of friends. And it was literally in the first 5 minutes of the game that he had thrown him. I think it was like a touchdown or something, one more touchdown he needed for $1 million. Brady's just thrown him straight into the end zone, first red zone attempt, he gets a catch. And I'm thinking, how good must that work for the quarterback who just wants the trust of his offense, wants to trust his O-line, that he'll look after you if you look after him, one of the ones.
100%.
You've got to imagine he is that type of guy that looks after. I would not be surprised if Mike Evans was on bloody bonuses at the weekend.
Right.
Nearly cost me a place in a bloody league.
But 100% they're doing that. It's not, they're aware of all these bonuses, they're talking about it, and they're working, they're helping each other out.
Yeah, 100%. But we'll not hang about too long, Shug. We've done it slightly different tonight, given the circumstances and stuff like that. Kept it nice and short, but we'll be back next week. I think we're looking to get next week's episode out on a Thursday. We'll be recording on a Wednesday from now on, given that the fantasy season's over. We're coming up to playoff season. We're going to throw in a few specials, hopefully have a few more interviews for you guys. We had a great interview with Adam Goldstein, who in 2008 covered something around 41 NFL regular season games and tailgated every single one of them. So check that out on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast apps. But Shug, my pleasure as ever.
Yep. Certainly, mate. Enjoyed being back in.
Yep, and we'll throw a vote into the chat and we'll see how we're going to go forward with week 18. But thank you to everyone that's listening. Please remember to subscribe, give us a wee follow, and just keep listening. Thank you very much if you've listened right throughout the fantasy season. But for this week, goodbye.